My name's Brownman, born in Trinidad, schooled in New York City, and now living in Toronto, where it's cold for Trinidadians. And I've been playing trumpet since I was, oh Lord, maybe, I guess I was around 10. Yeah. And I got my hands on this thing. I'd been listening to Miles Davis. My folks used to play a lot of Miles in the house. And apparently I used to sleep by the speakers when I was a baby, when they played Miles. So I grew up with this heavy affinity for Miles Davis. Didn't really even know it, didn't realize it. And when I finally got my hands on this horn, it didn't sound like Miles. It was very disappointing. It sounded like this. And I was like, what's wrong? It's ma'am, it's broken. The thing is broken. Can I get another horn? So, yeah, it took years, man. It took like takes about 3 or 4 years before the stupid thing stopped sounding like a braying mule, and practicing all day, all the time. And but I was put here to do it, very much. I think I've always known that I was put here to be a trumpet player, be a jazz musician, be an improviser. Urban music is starting to inform jazz more than anything else, I find. All my heroes, especially in today's context, are using hip-hop ideology and groove ideology and funk ideologies and drum and bass, jungle, and kind of folding it and weaving it into the jazz context. Jazz was, it has changed. One thing about jazz that I love is that it's a constantly evolving art form, and because of the smallness of the world, because the world, through telecommunications and satellite technology and the internet, the musical world we live in is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and genres are starting to blend and cross-pollinate. And I think that's a great thing. I think that's part of the evolution of the art form. Some will argue that they feel it's the death of the art form, but these are the traditionalists speaking, and I'm not part of that camp. I'm part of the evolutionist camp that feels that that's part of the evolution of this art. We need to embrace it. and the urban context is one of the, I mean, it's been happening for a while now. Rock music was considered part of the urban culture in the 60s and 70s, and that affected jazz heavily. There was a whole movement. They called it the jazz rock fusion movement. The word fusion became like almost a bad word for a while. But the point is that this urban ideology started to affect the jazz art form, and I think that it continues to today. So I'm just a proponent of that. I'm just trying to, help propagate it, and jump on board. Randy Brecker, that's the home wrecker. He's like a surrogate father, man. I studied with him in New York City, and he built me. I really feel he's very responsible for a lot of my musical ideologies. I don't know if he would want to take credit for that, but I feel that. Randy is one of the most. He's been called the greatest modern jazz trumpet player in history. He's an absolute modernist, so a lot of my ideology is derivative of watching him and what he did with the Brecker brothers and what he did as a session musician, as a studio musician in that day and age. I spoke earlier about the idea that when you're a session musician or sideman and you go to play in someone else's group, and your role, your job is to help them achieve what they see in their heads, or what they hear in their heads, their musical visions. If you're a good sideman, right? And Randy's the king of that, and he still has his own visions. And Miles, he's sort of an extension of what Miles Davis was back in the day, right? Miles was, 1947, he was playing with Charlie Parker, and was a sideman for a lot of people, and then eventually became this leader that would go on to reshape jazz history. 5 times, man. 5 different eras of jazz. Miles was on the forefront of, on the forward cusp of. Yeah, so, these are my heroes, not just musically, but ideologically, in terms of their visions, and always move forward. And that's something I try and live my life by musically, is always move forward, never look back. Electric Trio. What's coming up? Record, DVD. You know, it all sort of, there's a sort of standardized situation that has to happen with all bands. You have to write some tunes, you have to rehearse a whole bunch, you have to get a sound happening, a concept, and an ideology. Ooh, I love that word. And then you have to record, because the record is a snapshot in time. It's the captured moment in time and space. So that's got to happen. So we're right now, as we're filming this DVD, the Electric Trio has completed a record, which I'm actually on my way to as soon as I leave this place to continue mixing, and then tours. That's the next thing after this. We've been pretty busy, been gigging a lot, both in Canada and in the U.S., but they've been sort of one-off dates. You fly in, you do the gig, you fly out. But so I'm looking forward to the big tour, which will come soon, and the release of the record. Brownman.com, it'll all be there.